Native advertising. Native advertising is a type of advertising that matches the form and function of the platform upon which it appears. In many cases it functions like an advertorial, and manifests as a video, article or editorial. The word native refers to this coherence of the content with the other media that appear on the platform. These ads reduce a consumer's ad recognition by blending the ad into the native content of the platform, using somewhat ambiguous language such as sponsored or branded content. They can be difficult to properly identify due to their ambiguous nature. Product placement, embedded marketing, is a precursor to native advertising. The former places the product within the content, whereas in native marketing, which is legally permissible in the US to the extent that there is sufficient disclosure, the product and content are merged. Forms. Despite the ambiguity surrounding native advertising's invention, many experts do consider the Hallmark Hall of Fame, a series which first aired in 1951 and still runs today, as among the earliest instances of the technique. According to Lindgren Profile, the award-winning series is arguably one of the earliest examples of native advertising that is secondary to the message being delivered, but impactful through its association with valued content. Contemporary formats for native advertising now include promoted videos, images, articles, commentary, music, and other various forms of media. A majority of these methods for delivering the native strategy have been relegated to an online presence, where it is most commonly employed as publisher-produced brand content, a similar concept to the traditional advertorial. Alternative examples of modern technique include search advertising, when ads appear alongside search results that qualify as native to the search experience. Popular examples include Twitter's promoted tweets, Facebook's promoted stories, and Tumblr's promoted posts. The most traditionally influenced form of native marketing manifests as the placement of sponsor-funded content alongside editorial content, or showing other content you might be interested in which is sponsored by a marketer alongside editorial recommendations. Most recently, controversy has arisen as to whether content marketing is a form of native marketing, or if they are inherently separate ideologies and styles, with native market strategists claiming that they utilize content marketing techniques, and some content market strategists claiming to not be a form of native marketing. Sponsored content, content marketing. In most recent years of the millennium, the most notable form of native advertising has been sponsored content. The production of sponsored content, sometimes abbreviated as SpunCon, involves inclusion of a third party along with a management company or a brand company's personal relations and promotional activities team in reaching out to aforementioned considerably popular third-party content producers on social media, often independent, deemed influencers in an attempt to promote a product. Often quoted as the predecessor to traditional endorsed and/or contract advertising, which would instead be featuring celebrities, sponsored content has indubitably become more and more popular on social media platforms in recent years, likely due to their cost-effectiveness, time efficiency, as well as the ability to receive instant feedback on the marketability of a product or service. A technique often used in traditional sponsored advertising is direct and indirect product placement, embedded marketing. Instead of embedded marketing's technique of placing the product within the content, in native marketing, the product and content are merged, and in sponsored content the product, content and active promotion occurs simultaneously across a number of platforms. Unlike traditional forms of native advertising, sponsored content alludes to requirement of and desire for transparency and thrives on the concept of pre-existing and/or built-up trust between consumer and content producer rather than creating a masked net impression, which is a reasonable consumer's understanding of an advertisement. The underlying motives of sponsored content, however, is similar to that of native advertising, which is to inhibit a consumer's ad recognition by blending the ad into the native content of the platform, making many consumers unaware they are looking at an ad to begin with. The sponsored content on social media, like any other type of native advertising, can be difficult to be properly identified by the Federal Trade Commission because of their rather ambiguous nature. Native advertising frequently bypasses this net impression standard, which makes them problematic. Categories of sponsored content. Sponsored videos. Sponsored videos involve the content producer/influencer including or mentioning the service/product for a particular amount of time within their video. This type of sponsorship is evident across all genres and levels of production regarding video content. There is a history of trouble between content producers and their transparency of sponsors regarding endorsement guidelines set by the Federal Trade Commission. Most sponsored videos include a brief or a contract and can vary from client to client and affects the nature of promotion of the product as well as specific requirements such as length of the promotion period. Notable companies involved in this trade include Audible, Squarespace, Crunchyroll and Vanity Planet. Sponsored social media posts. Sponsored social media posts usually consist of the content producer/influencer including or mentioning the service/product for a particular amount of time within a single or series of social media posts. Most sponsored posts include a brief or a contract and can vary from client to client. Notable companies involved in this trade include Fit Tea, Sugar Bear Hair and various diet meal planning services and watch brands. Collaborative content. Collaborative content has become more prominent on video platforms and social media in recent years. Content producers/influencers are usually contacted by companies for their creative input and voice in the makings of a product or provided with a discount code to gain a percentage of the profits after consumers incorporate the code as a part of their purchase. Collaborative content may also include a brief or a contract and can vary from client to client. However, there is a degree of flexibility as the finished product is supposedly a representation of the content producer. Notable companies involved in this trade include Pixie, ColourPop and MAC Cosmetics. Social media platforms with sponsored content. Sponsored content can be found on several platforms with varying levels in production value of the finished product. Advertising disclosure. As it is the nature of disguised advertising to blend with its surroundings, a clear disclosure is deemed necessary when employing native marketing strategy in order to protect the consumer from being deceived, and to assist audiences in distinguishing between sponsored and regular content. According to the Federal Trade Commission, means of disclosure include visual cues, labels, and other techniques. The most common practices of these are recognizable by understated labels, such as advertisement, ad, promoted, sponsored, featured partner, or suggested post in subtitles, corners, or the bottoms of ads. A widespread tendency in such measures is to mention the brand name of the sponsor, as in promoted by, sponsored by, or presented by. These can vary drastically due to the publisher's choice of disclosure language, i.e. wording used to identify native advertising placement. In 2009, the Federal Trade Commission released their endorsement guidelines specifically to increase consumer awareness of endorsements and testimonials in advertising given the rise in popularity of social media and blogging. The American Society of Magazine Editors, ASME, released updated guidelines in 2015 reaffirming the need of publishers to distinguish editorial and advertising content. The ASME approach recommends both labels to disclose commercial sponsorship and in-content visual evidence to help the user distinguish native advertising from editorial. A study published by University of California researchers found that even labeled native advertising deceived about a quarter of survey research subjects. In the study, 27% of respondents thought that journalists or editors wrote an advertorial for diet pills, despite the presence of the sponsored content label. Because the Federal Trade Commission can bring cases concerning practices that mislead a substantial minority of consumers, the authors conclude that many native advertising campaigns are probably deceptive under federal law. The authors also explain two theories of why native advertising is deceptive. First, the schema theory suggests that advertorials mislead by causing consumers not to trigger their innate skepticism to advertising. Second, advertorials also cause source-based misleadingness problems by imbuing advertising material with the authority normally assigned to editorial content. Recognition percentages remain low even as native advertising has expanded in pervasiveness. An academic article published in 2017 has shown that only 17% of participants could identify native advertising, and even if readers were primed, that number only increased to 27%. Moreover, when readers learned about covert advertising, their perceptions of the publications declined. Categories of online ads. The Interactive Advertising Bureau, IAB, the primary organization responsible for developing AD industry standards and conducting business research, published a report in 2013 detailing 6 different categories for differentiating types of native advertisements. Digital platforms. Native advertising platforms are classified into 2 categories, commonly referred to as open and closed platforms, but hybrid options are also utilized with some frequency. Closed platforms are formats created by brands for the purpose of promoting their own content intrinsically on their websites. Advertisements seen on these platforms will not be seen on others, as these ad types are generated for its sole use, and structured around exhibiting ad units within the confines of the website's specific agendas. Namely, advertisements distributed on closed platforms originate from the platform's brand itself. Popular examples include promoted tweets on Twitter, sponsored stories on Facebook, and TrueView video ads on YouTube. Open platforms are defined by the promotion of the same piece of branded content across multiple platforms ubiquitously, but through some variation of native ad formats. Unlike closed platforms, the content itself lives outside any given website that it appears on, and is usually distributed across multiple sites by a third-party company, meaning that the advertisements appearing on open platforms namely are placed there by an advertiser. Hybrid platforms allow the content publishing platforms to install a private marketplace where advertisers have the option to bid on the inventory of ad space either through direct sales or programmatic auction through what is known as real-time bidding, RTB. Therefore, advertisements distributed on hybrid platforms are placed there by the platform itself, the space having been sold to an open platform advertiser.